At 6:35 on the morning of the 8th of January 2021, in a stucco house in Chula Vista, California, a man picked up his phone and held the power button down until the screen asked him to confirm. He confirmed it. 10 minutes later, the family's black Lexus reversed off the driveway and turned out of the road. For the next 12 hours, Larry Millete left no trace on this earth. No calls, no messages, no location data, nothing. When that SUV came home, there were 444 miles on the odometer that nothing could explain.
That there were 444 missing miles from the Lexus on that date.
Half of 444 is 222. 222 miles east of Chula Vista, the tarmac runs out past Blythe and the desert takes over. Creosote scrub, dry wash. You can stand out there, turn a full circle, and not see another human being. His wife had walked into that house the night before. Nobody has seen her since. No body, no crime scene, no weapon, no witness. Just 444 miles that nobody has ever been able to account for. She was born Maya Tabalanza in the Philippines in 1981. At 13, she emigrated to Honolulu. In high school, working shifts at a fast food counter, she met a boy who'd recently arrived from San Diego. His name was Larry Millete. They married in May 2000. He was 18, she was 19. Maya became a civilian contract specialist for the Navy. Colleagues called her a mentor from the day they met her, a tiny woman with an enormous presence. She earned well into six figures and was the household's primary earner. She was 5'2". Her family called her miniature but fierce. She sang, really sang, the kind of voice that stops a room. She played guitar. She had musical notes tattooed across her shoulder. She'd bought herself a Jeep Rubicon and taken up off-roading, dragging her daughters out to the dunes at weekends. 3 children, 2 daughters and a son, aged 11, 9 and 4 by the winter of 2021. A career she'd climbed, a house worth over $1 million, a new Jeep, everything a person builds when they intend to stay. Remember that. It becomes the most important fact in the entire case. Depending on which video about this case you've watched, you may or may not have heard this. In January 2020, Maya began an affair with a married colleague named Jamie Laird, a man she supervised. She kept a second private Instagram account to talk to him. When investigators opened it, the messages were sexual and constant. Larry found out. In June, he confronted the pair in a car park and contacted Laird's wife to expose it. He did not stop. Neither did Maya. All of it is documented. And it needs saying plainly rather than tidied away, because an entire wing of the internet now uses it to argue that Maya brought this on herself. Maya lied to her husband. That was a real wrong, and the man she was involved with was married to a pregnant woman who had done nothing to anybody. None of it is a defense. An affair is a reason to file for divorce. It is not a reason to end up as 444 unaccounted miles on somebody's odometer. And here's what actually matters for this case. It is not a moral test Maya failed. It is the clock. Everything Larry did from that moment, the tracking, the emails to her boss, the hexes, the searches, is a man responding to it. 2 people can both behave badly. Only one of them stopped being a person on the 7th of January. There was never a body, never a scene, never a weapon. What there is instead is paper. 1,709 pages of messages to online spellcasters. A purchase ledger, a browser history, a private social media diary, a wall of neighborhood cameras, a phone's power-off log, and that odometer. It starts here. In February 2020, an anonymous woman contacted Maya's workplace to report the relationship. Larry then emailed her supervisor directly, twice, demanding a specific employee be moved to another division, because here is what he understood. If her employer believed she was having an affair at work, She could lose everything she'd built. He wasn't trying to save the marriage. He was mapping her pressure points. In May, she packed a bag and went to stay with her brother JR and his wife Genesis. That's when Genesis started getting the messages. Where is Maya? What is she doing? Is she still wearing her wedding ring? The messages kept coming, day after day. By late May, on a single day, Genesis counted close to 200 of them. A colleague testified she once found Larry standing outside Maya's office, with his face pressed against the glass, looking in. In August, Maya found her own daughter's mobile phone hidden inside her car. It had been put there to follow her. She locked herself in a room. Larry broke through the door. She photographed the damage and sent it to her closest friend. In December, she found something else. Speakers, under the bed, playing while she slept. Subliminal recordings, bought and installed in her own bedroom. The message on the loop was 3 words, repeating. No more men. Larry admitted it in a text to Genesis, and included the phrase Maya had thrown at him. She'd accused him, he wrote, of caging her in an invisible cage. He was describing it as though it were unfair. In September 2020, Larry Millete told his sister-in-law he wanted to apprentice under a spellcaster. Genesis warned him off. He said he was desperate, and then wrote, "I'm ready to sell my soul." What investigators recovered was an archive. Working through an astrology website and the freelance marketplace Fiverr, Larry Millete generated 1,709 pages of communications with online spellcasters, 70 spells, $1,154.05. He left 5-star reviews. A man giving customer feedback on a hex. And the archive has a shape. In September, the requests are about love. A spell to bind his wife to him forever. By late September, they turn dark. A curse aimed at Jamie Laird. Then October. The tone changes completely. Could Maya be given the worst nightmares? Because she needed to be punished. Could a spell cripple her, without killing? Then December. The heaviest month in the file. 758 pages. On the 27th, a week before she was last seen, he asked a caster to make her seriously ill and keep her ill until only he and the children were left at her bedside. He used the word deathbed. The same day, he asked that she be incapacitated so she could not leave the house. Larry wrote, "It's time to take the gloves off." On New Year's Eve, he asked whether she could be hurt badly enough to depend on him. An accident, perhaps, or a broken bone. In the first 8 days of January, he generated another 455 pages. His final message about Maya was sent on the 7th of January at 4:40 in the afternoon. He asked that she be made miserable without him. 2 minutes later, his wife walked through their front door for the last time. On the 8th of January, there are no messages about Maya at all, not one. On the 9th, at 5 minutes to 6 in the morning, he logged in and asked a caster to stop hexing his wife, and to hex Jamie Laird instead. The spells were never going to work. That was never the point. What the ledger gave prosecutors was a time-stamped record of a mind travelling, month by month, from make her love me to make her unable to walk away, and then stopping, overnight, like a tap. While he was buying hexes, he was also using a search engine. A forensic specialist told the jury the history included searches for psychological torture and for how to mentally torture someone with words. Another read, subliminal wife training. In March 2020, searches around poison hemlock, water hemlock, carbon monoxide, rohypnol. And somewhere in that same period, Maya was writing too. She kept a private Instagram account under the username Sailor Moon. It had no followers. An investigator told the jury she used it as a diary, keeping a record nobody else would ever read. One caption, put up in the summer of 2020, was 8 words long. Maya wrote, "I think Larry, my husband, is poisoning me." She had no proof. She had no idea what she was standing next to. She stayed in the house. On the day of Larry's arrest in October 2021, investigators searched that house until midnight. They carried out cloth dolls, books of spells, a photograph of a homemade altar with blood thrown across an old picture of the couple, his own blood, and 2 small glass vials containing a dark, moss-like substance. The vials went to the FBI laboratory at Quantico, where a chemist was asked to look for conine, the neurotoxin in poison hemlock. It was the first time in her career anyone had asked her for it. One of the vials tested positive. The head of San Diego's Poison Control Division told jurors conine is fast-acting and extremely potent, ranked beside cyanide and ricin, and that it cannot legally be bought in the United States. The defense answered, not without force, that no quantity was ever measured and that poison hemlock grows wild across San Diego County. Prosecutors never told the jury this was how Maya died. They set it beside the search history and let the dates talk. At the very end of December 2020, the whole extended family drove out to the dunes at Glamis, where they'd camped for years. It was meant to be a fresh start. It became the last time most of them saw her. Sitting in a trailer with her sisters, Maya finally said it out loud. She was going to file. It would be messy, and they should get ready. Her sister Maricris told her to sort her finances first, because despite what she earned, Maya had almost no independent control over the household money. Maya said she wasn't waiting, and then she said the sentence her family has carried every day since. Maya told them, "If something happens to me, it's going to be Larry." A colleague testified that Maya had told her Larry would never let her go, and that if anything ever happened, they would never find her. She was more accurate than anyone wanted her to be. There were things happening that week nobody told her about. On the 2nd of January, Larry asked Maya's brother, not for the first time, whether he knew anyone who could deal with Laird. He offered $20,000, and at some point that week, standing in a living room, Larry told Maya's elderly father he would kill her, or him. Then he lifted his shirt and showed the old man the gun on his hip. Her father thought he was joking. Maya, meanwhile, had told a friend that Larry once choked her until she lost consciousness. She never told her sister. She never told her parents. Her family learned it from a police affidavit, 10 months after she disappeared. 4 people, 4 fragments, nobody holding the whole shape of it. Thursday, the 7th of January, 2021. Paseo Los Gatos is a street of security cameras. That wall of glass is why we know almost exactly how Maya Millete spent her last afternoon. At around 1:45, a legal assistant at a family law firm took a call from a frightened woman who didn't want to come into the office because she thought she might be followed and didn't want her husband knowing she'd rung. The assistant was unsettled enough to believe she needed a lawyer within 24 hours. Maya said no. Not before the weekend. Her eldest daughter was turning 11 and the family were driving to Big Bear on the 9th. She booked the appointment for the 12th. At 3 o'clock, a neighbour's camera caught Maya in the driveway with her children, unloading the Jeep. Her 4-year-old son can be heard asking 3 separate times whether he can come with her to the car wash. The jury heard that boy's voice 5 years later. He was speaking to his mother roughly 4 hours before prosecutors say she was killed. At 3:22, the Jeep pulled away. At 4:42, it came back. She parked. She walked towards the front door carrying bags. She went inside. No camera on that street ever recorded her coming out again. Now listen to what those cameras picked up over the next 6 hours. This is the lead investigator's timeline, given under oath in 2026. Most of it never laid out publicly, because every major piece of coverage on this case predates the trial. At 5:12, the children's tutor arrives. By 5:48, Maya's last known call has ended. She's messaging friends about the argument that started. Larry wants the children. He wants the house. Then, At 8:15 p.m., she sends a Facebook message to one of her sisters, a photograph of a toy hauler trailer she's thinking of buying. Stop on that one. Her final act of communication on this planet was showing her sister something she planned to buy for a future she fully intended to have. Half an hour later, at 8:45, a single loud bang. More than an hour after that, 9:57 p.m., 5 loud bangs, one after another. Then the dogs. All across the neighborhood, dogs start barking. A 6th bang. The dogs keep going. A 7th, an 8th. The recording went to the FBI. The FBI could not determine what the sounds were. Neither could the lead detective. A lot of people online have decided they know exactly what's on that audio, and the honest answer, given under oath twice, is that nobody has ever been able to say. 10:30 p.m. The same camera picks up the Millete children playing outside in the garden. Here is that recording. It is January. It is a school night. It is about 40 degrees. It is nearly 11 at night, and 3 children aged 11, 9 and 4 are outside in the dark. The neighbor who owns that camera hadn't heard any of it live. She found it days later. What she remembered from that night was her dog barking and barking at nothing. When she finally heard those bangs on the recording, she said it took her breath away. 1:25 a.m. Maya's phone registers its last data event and goes dark forever. It has never been recovered. Nobody has ever explained why 3 children were outside at 10:30 on a January school night. Not to the prosecution, not the defense, not across 5 years of hearings and an 8-week trial. It is simply on the record. And it sits there. Friday the 8th. At 2:38 that morning, Larry's phone was plugged in to charge. At 4:45 a.m., nearly full, it was unplugged. At around 6, the continuous recording system next door captured him coming out of the house. He got into the black Lexus, pulled it into the road, then reversed it back in, angled so the camera couldn't see the back of the vehicle. He spent several minutes around it, locked it, went inside. If reversing an SUV up to a house at 6 in the morning after a wife disappears sounds familiar, it's because you've watched this kind of case before. You already know which one you're thinking of. At 6:35 a.m., his phone was powered off by hand. Not a dead battery. A forensic examiner testified the device logged the moment the power down option was selected. For a man described as never being without his phone, 12 hours of silence was, in one investigator's words, historically uncharacteristic. At 6:45 a.m., the Lexus left. He took his 4-year-old son and left the other 2 in the house. He was scheduled to work. He never showed up. At 6:06 that evening, the SUV came home. 29 minutes later, the phone came back on. Larry's account changed. He first told Maya's brother he'd been at work. Later, he said he'd taken his son to the beach. Solana Beach, he told detectives, then pointed at Torrey Pines when handed a map, a completely different stretch of coast. Nobody could place either of them anywhere on that coastline. So a district attorney's investigator, named James Rhodes, went back through everything. The Lexus's last service in December, its odometer when it was impounded in January, and every journey the family's vehicles made in between, cell records, card transactions, toll data, the SUV's own ignition logs. Every trip accounted for, except one day, 444 miles, that nothing in the record could explain. And there was one more thing on that navigation system. At 3:29 in the afternoon, the Millete home address was typed into it. The action of a man who has finished doing whatever he drove out to do and now needs to find his way back. 222 miles east of Chula Vista, puts a vehicle past Blythe, near Quartzsite, country the family had crossed on desert trips. Prosecutors told the jury that's where they believe Maya Millete is. Rhodes testified they'd searched out there 3 times and never found her. And there's one more piece of footage. When Maya's sister and brother-in-law walked into that house in January, 2 things struck them. Boxes everywhere, which they'd never seen before. And it was cold, January in Southern California, and the air conditioning was running. Nobody could explain that for 5 years. Then, at trial, the prosecution briefly played a piece of surveillance video. On the 9th of January, 2 days after Maya was last seen, before anyone had reported her missing, a freezer is wheeled out of the house on a dolly and loaded onto a white SUV belonging to Larry's aunt, and then it went away. The defense produced a photograph of that freezer. It appeared to be in a different house entirely, around 3 feet tall. A 5'2" woman does not fit inside a 3-foot box. Prosecutors never explained what they thought it meant, never raised it again, and it formed no part of the case that convicted him. So let me be straight, not a smoking gun, and not nothing. An appliance leaving a house on a dolly 2 days after a woman vanished from it, 48 hours before anyone called the police. No one has ever accounted for it, which is the honest shape of this entire case. Almost everything in it is a thing that looks like something, and the jury's job was to decide whether 444 of those things, stacked in order, add up to only one reasonable answer. On the evening of Friday the 8th, Maya's brother, J.R., drove over, because the family group chat had gone quiet. It was his 9-year-old niece who opened the door, and she told her uncle her mother had been shut in her room for 11 hours and hadn't fed them. Maya's other brother rang that same night. What unsettled him wasn't what Larry said. It was that whenever Larry hadn't known where Maya was before, he panicked. He blew up phones. He begged. This time, he was calm. On Saturday the 9th, the day they should all have been in Big Bear, singing Happy Birthday, Maya's parents drove down. Her father, Pablito, went upstairs and knocked with his elbow for a solid 5 minutes. Then he asked Larry whether he had a key. Larry reached into his own pocket and produced one. That floored the old man. It was Maya's room. Larry wasn't supposed to have a key at all. The door opened on an empty room. Larry walked past him to the desk and announced her credit card was missing. He suggested she'd gone jogging, put an arm around the old man's shoulders, told him not to worry. Her father would testify that his son-in-law showed no emotion whatsoever about his wife being gone. That same afternoon, Larry asked a neighbour, the one whose camera had been recording the street for days, about getting the Lexus detailed. At 11:18 that night, Maricris rang the police herself. Officers arrived around 1 in the morning. Her Jeep was outside, her belongings were there, her ID, her bank card and her phone were gone. Nothing else was. The following day, the family gathered at the house anyway, because it was a little girl's 11th birthday. They put out a cake and kept looking at the door. Afterwards, the child said 7 words to her aunt that everyone who has followed this case knows by heart. Mummy didn't show up for my birthday. 4 days after Maya was last heard from, a man named Billy Little drove to Paseo Los Gatos. He wasn't a detective, an attorney, and a former criminal defense investigator for the Navy. Somebody asked for help. He went. Larry let him in. The first thing Little noticed was that almost every window in the house was open. It was January. The place was being aired out. The second was upstairs. A hole in the bedroom door, right beside the handle, exactly where you'd punch through to reach a lock on the other side. He touched the patch. It felt new. It felt wet. Larry said Maya had punched it. Inside the room, there was a second repaired hole, at a height a 5'2" woman couldn't reach. Larry said she'd punched that one too. By the time Little left, he believed Larry had killed his wife, and that if the security footage on that street was going to survive, somebody needed to collect it immediately. So he did, door by door, The recordings you heard earlier, the garden audio, the bangs, exist because a private citizen went and collected them before detectives did. For weeks, Chula Vista police treated this as a missing person. The family said there was no urgency and began holding rallies outside the police department demanding answers. The house wasn't searched under warrant until the 23rd of January, 16 days after Maya was last seen. And at trial, under cross-examination, the defense established one more fact. The lead investigator, the man who built the timeline, who collected the audio, who put the whole thing together, confirmed that Maya Millete was the first homicide he had ever investigated. There's a fair answer to this. A missing adult is not a homicide. To a stranger working through a stack of case files, a woman with a divorce lawyer on retainer and a marriage in ruins looks like exactly what she might be, a woman who simply left. Police cannot search a home on a family's certainty. And they did, eventually, build the case that convicted him. But the family were never asking them to be certain. They were asking them to hurry. 16 days. The investigation grew enormous. Chula Vista police joined by the FBI, NCIS, and the district attorney's office, volunteers walking the dunes and the desert washes. Larry Millete attended none of it. 8 days after she vanished, he sat for a phone interview with a local reporter, and it did not go the way he needed it to. Asked what he loved about his wife, he said he loved everything about her. Then he stopped. The reporter waited, then started supplying the answers herself. She liked to hike, didn't she? She was probably a great mum. And he agreed with each one as it was handed to him. 20 years of marriage, and somebody else had to do the remembering. At 11:42 on the morning of the 19th of October, 2021, a SWAT team went through the door after 67 search warrants and 87 interviews. Then, the case went quiet for 4.5 years, during which Maya's 3 children were raised by the parents of the man charged with killing their mother, and a prosecutor told a judge in open court what those children were being told in the meantime, that their mother had walked away, that she hadn't loved them. Maricris did not win guardianship until August of 2024. The trial finally opened on the 18th of May 2026. Deputy District Attorney Christy Bowles reduced her theory to 7 words. Bowles told the jury, rather than let her leave, he killed her. The defense went straight at the hole in the case. No crime scene, no direct evidence. And Maya, they argued, had been living a double life investigators never properly examined. On the second day, Maya's father broke down on the stand and shouted at his former son-in-law across the courtroom. The judge cleared the room. Over 8 weeks, more than 60 witnesses testified. And the jury heard Maya herself, a recording she made secretly in October 2020, in which her husband confronts her about the affair, and she answers with a question that hangs in the air. Maya asked him, "So that's enough for you to wish death on me all the time?" Larry Millete did not testify. In rebuttal, Bowles said the jury would have to accept an extraordinary run of coincidences. He was, she said, either the unluckiest person in the world, or he is guilty of murder. On the 9th of July 2026, after less than a day of deliberation, the jury returned. Maya's family filed in wearing green, her favourite colour, guilty of first-degree murder. Larry Millete has a tattoo across his back. It reads, "Only God can judge me. 12 people just did." He is due to be sentenced on the 29th of September 2026 and faces 25 years to life. One juror called him a master manipulator and said that wherever Maya is, he knows exactly. Maya Millete is still out there. Somewhere a jury was told sits 222 miles east of her own front door. The only person alive who knows has said nothing and intends to keep saying nothing. If you have any information about her whereabouts, Chula Vista Police can be reached on 6119-691-5139 Crime Stoppers anonymously on 888 582 8477